So what if the very things keeping you alive right now are the exact things trapping you? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely mind-bending concept from Zhufeng's 36-8 trigram arrays. Specifically, we're looking at something called the array of instinct. It's this highly esoteric, deeply thought-provoking philosophy about human nature that essentially asks, are our core survival mechanisms actually holding us back from spiritual evolution? We're going to unpack the source material, see exactly how it defines this trap, and spoiler alert, look at how it claims we can actually escape it.
To wrap our heads around this, we'll follow a pretty straightforward roadmap. We'll look at the power of instinct, break down the 3 human instincts, map out the hierarchy of life, explore the paradox of protection, figure out how to escape the array, and finally, touch on reaching the celestial realm.
All right, let's jump right into part 1, the power of instinct.
I want you to think about the absolute miracles of nature all around us. Bees making perfectly hexagonal honeycombs, birds weaving intricate nests, cats pouncing on mice with flawless precision. And they do all of this without any prior learning or overthinking. According to the text, this innate survival ability is profound. It operates with zero practice or experience. The source proposes that this automatic perfection is actually a brilliant mechanism bestowed by what it calls the greatest creator. It's given to life forms simply so they can survive and reproduce.
But here is where it gets really interesting. In this philosophy, this isn't just basic biology. It's a literal instinct array. Think of it as a set program. Just like computer code directs a piece of software, this array is a rigid process directing all living things to maintain their existence. So when you feel hungry or scared, you aren't just feeling an emotion, you are literally executing a line of code in the instinct array.
Which brings us to part 2, the 3 human instincts.
Now, this master program categorizes our human nature into 3 distinct buckets: physiological, mental, and spiritual. And the source makes it very clear, if we want any shot at escaping this array, we have to recognize just how deeply entangled we are in every single one of these levels. Let's break them down. First up, we've got the physiological instinct. Simply put, this is pure survival. Physiologically, our base programming forces us to constantly chase physical comfort. Eating, drinking, sleeping. But it also dictates our defensive reactions. Every single time you feel fear or that sudden urge to run away from danger, that is your physiological programming grabbing the steering wheel to keep your physical body intact.
Next is the mental instinct. And wow, this really flips the script on how we view human ambition. Mentally, we are programmed with this intense instinct for desire. It's not just about staying alive anymore. It's our relentless pursuit of romantic love, deep friendships, the drive to dominate, to own things, to accumulate wealth, and to climb that social ladder. The text basically frames all of these complex human ambitions as nothing more than instinctual programming. Crazy, right?
And finally, we hit the spiritual instinct. Spiritually, the program binds us with a truly profound fear of our own mortality. This shows up as a desperate craving for eternal life, or even just our modern obsession with eternal youth. So that existential dread you feel when thinking about the end of your life, according to this framework, that's not some deep philosophical realization. It's actually just the final, stickiest layer of the instinct array, keeping you firmly tethered to this earthly existence.
Okay, let's move on to part 3, the hierarchy of life. Let's see where humans actually sit on the cosmic ladder.
So, mapping out this grand hierarchy from the text, at the very bottom, you have bacteria and plants, and they run entirely on instinct. A bit higher up, animals run mainly on instinct, but start showing basic thought. And then there's us, humans, caught right in the messy middle. We use instinct, sure, but we also rely on experience, thinking, and what the text calls spontaneous ability. Above us are the celestials, who rely mostly on that spontaneous ability, and at the very top, super-celestials, operating entirely on pure self-awareness. The golden rule to take away here is this: the lower the level of life, the stronger the instinct. The higher the life form, the weaker the instinct.
This brings us to a massive realization in part 4, the paradox of protection.
The text drops this quote, "Instinct serves as both protection and constraint for life." This paradox is the absolute core of the whole philosophy. It means the exact same set program that keeps you alive physically, the one that makes you yank your hand off a hot stove, is the exact same cage that is constraining your spiritual evolution. Because of this protection, you survive, but because of the constraint, you can't ascend beyond your current form. It's exactly like wearing a life jacket that also happens to be tied to a heavy anchor.
So, the ultimate choice laid out for us is pretty stark. On one side, if you rely heavily on instinct, obsessing over food, wealth, status, your fears, you remain trapped near the animal kingdom. You're playing completely by the array's rules. But on the flip side, reducing that reliance on instinct is your way out. Weakening those physiological, mental, and spiritual drives is exactly how you start to break the program, escape the array, and edge closer to a celestial state.
So, the big question, how do we actually do that? Let's get into Part 5, Escaping the Array.
The source outlines a very systematic four-step procedure for this transcendence. It requires us to essentially rewrite our own code by tackling those three buckets of instinct we just talked about, layer by layer, before finally elevating our entire paradigm of thought.
Let's look at the hard specifics. To achieve physiological and mental detachment, the text says you have to actively stop pouring so much effort into eating, dressing well, and living in luxury. You have to break free from emotional and romantic dependence, stop chasing fame, and give up the race for wealth. And spiritually, you have to completely conquer your fear of aging and death. You essentially have to let go of everything that makes you feel secure as a human being, which, is absolutely no small task.
But if you can manage that massive undertaking, it brings us to our final section, Part 6, Reaching the Celestial Realm.
Once you've detached from those physical and mental traps, the text states you have to completely elevate your cognitive abilities. To truly leave the array behind, you must transition your thoughts toward totally new paradigms, listed here as visualized thinking, Taiji thinking, formless thinking, and holographic thinking. Now, while the source doesn't define every single one of those in deep detail right here, the implication is crystal clear. You have to ditch rigid, linear human logic and embrace a massively expansive, abstract way of perceiving reality.
And that leads to the ultimate practice. The text instructs that you must consciously imitate the celestial beings, specifically those in the higher realms it names as the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, and the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. By actively mimicking the mindset and lifestyle of these higher realms, you essentially pull yourself upward. Over time, through this imitation and deep detachment, the source claims you will finally transcend your human programming entirely. It is a truly fascinating radical blueprint for escaping human nature. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. Look closely at your own daily desires, your ambitions, and your deepest fears, and ask yourself, based on the roadmap we just uncovered, are these feelings actually yours, or are they literally just code executing in the background? Will you remain bound by the instinct array, or will you elevate your thinking to ascend? It's definitely something to chew on. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.